Top Republicans meeting this week in Washington, trying to get on the same page ahead of November's midterm elections. And their focus, it's more on appearance and policy, better messaging, more disciplined candidates. The game plan, many see, that's the key, not only to hold in the House, but to get back the Senate. And they can, because as one unnamed GOP state chairman put it, given the problems this president's facing right now, quote, only we, meaning the Republican Party, can screw this up this time. And by screw this up, he means another government shutdown or a debt limit default or even just a showdown over the debt like the one that we saw back in late 2011, the one that led to the downgrade of the U.S. credit rating. And right there in the middle of it all, next to John Boehner, I can see it, by far the best looking person in the panel right there, our own Nan Hayworth. You don't look too happy there, Nan. So Republicans, they want to avoid that from happening all over again. But yesterday, Treasury Secretary announced the next debt limit would arrive at the end of next month, February, and Republican leadership immediately signaled they will play chicken once again here. No specifics, but leaders in the House and Senate say they will not pass a clean debt limit increase, meaning they will want spending cuts in return. This is kind of the same dance here of the seven veils we saw leading up to this thing all over again. And already some on the right, whether it's on the radio and even some of the electeds, they say, hey, if we got to go all the way to the mattresses on this one again, we'll do it. You lived through this. You paid an electoral price for this. You would think you have Obamacare to beat them up on. You got the economy, and even though we can argue that it's improved, the soundbite is it's still bad.
It's still bad already.
Why would Republicans, when they seemingly found religion that this wasn't a fight worth fighting in the beginning of this year, right? Mm-hmm. Why would they even tempt fate and go back to having this fight all over again? It's bad politics.
They've got to be smart about it. I agree completely. I came out against a shutdown before that took place last fall. It was bad policy and bad politics. To my friends on the right, I would say, look, you can't always get the touchdown. You have to keep moving forward positively. If that means 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but you're moving in the right direction, that's what we need to do.
But if I may steal your metaphor, if I can hijack your football metaphor, you have to go long for them every now and again, or at least look down the field for that long pass. And I think that's what we're seeing here coming out of leadership in Washington. I don't think the chances of them actually holding the debt limit hostage are as good as they were with the government shutdown.
Democrats, but they're doing cartwheels. They're like, please,
right.
Republicans.
See,
but they have to show their base.
But with your metaphor, I disagree. They're not in a position to go long for the bomb. They have messed up so many times, and they have a new controversy today with Governor Mike Huckabee as it relates to women's issues and talking about women's libidos and so on. It's like, when does it stop with the Republican leadership?
They still have to play to their base, and they have to let the very conservative Tea Party voters out there know, hey, there's some of us who still want to have this debt limit held hostage. They can't come out right now and say.
I'm curious, Congress, do you agree with Andrew, or do you think enough people, if they just say, listen, it's more important to win. If we win, then we can make policy. Then it is appeasement and symbols. Which one is it?
I like to look at it as common sense, consensus, reason. And it's got to be from both sides. Negotiate in good faith. I would say to President Obama, in fairness on the other side of the aisle, don't say, I'm not going to negotiate. Everybody has to sit down respectfully, and they really do have to concentrate on what can be accomplished. It's not going to be as much as what those on the farthest right want. And that's understood. Have the vision for the policy. That's where the long vision comes in. What do we want to accomplish ultimately? Everybody shares the same goals. I don't know a Democrat or Republican who doesn't want everybody to do better. But how do you get it done? Have the policy vision, but negotiate in good faith.
For a budget issue, that's one thing, to certainly have those negotiations. The debt limit, the downside of cratering the debt limit is catastrophic, and it's catastrophic on everybody. Why would that be something that would need to be negotiated, as opposed to the president in this case saying, we can't do that. I mean, let's not hold that hostage.
But
and that's an easy position for him to take.
Negotiate in good faith on the progress we can make on the issues that are before us. I absolutely do not shut down the government. Do not threaten the full faith and credit of the United States. In effect, do not do those things. And that's a common sense approach.
Now, staying on the political calendar here, we mentioned the debt limit here. And again, taking the position, I think it's a fair one, that Republicans are dealing from a position of strength as it relates to the midterms here. And as that state party chairman said, as long as we don't screw this up, meaning his own party, comes another issue, and that is one that we see coming up over and over, the culture wars, okay? And as much as everybody says it's about the economy, somehow, some way, no matter what we say, it always comes back to the other stuff. Pro-life groups in Washington this week on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, abortion, the ruling being passed, those Republicans, they want more abortion restrictions. And as Times pointed out this week, they're going to get that on the ballot in a whole lot of states. They're looking to drive voters to the polls. Democrats also using the issue to try and move their own base. And the same thing applies when you talk about same-sex marriage. Each side using this as a wedge. Indiana, for example, they're moving forward on a constitutional amendment that would ban same-sex marriages, while the new Attorney General in Virginia, Democrat, he filed paperwork challenging his own state's ban when it comes to marriage equality. This is coming up over and over again, and culture wars, when you look at polling numbers, it's a little more complicated on choice, I grant you that. But certainly same-sex marriage, we know where the country's going. And it's not just enough to say, well, that's just going on in Indiana or Virginia. It becomes a national issue over again. Is the Republican Party any closer to saying, you know what, let's tone down the rhetoric on this thing here. We know long term how this is going to end up here, and it's only going to distract us from the economic message. First of all, can that be done? Can you get everybody, if not saying the same thing, but just to lower the temperature, because it's hurting the party?
And that's, Richard, that's exactly what I've said. You know, we do have to lower the temperature. And look, we have an example in our own state. Governor Cuomo made a statement.
Oh, we're going to talk about that tonight, trust me. Yep.
Earlier this week that sounded exceedingly intolerant. That's a divisive tone that we simply don't need. And it's something that we have to approach with respect from both sides. There are deeply held views that we have to share. We have to find a common ground somewhere.
It's one of the most frustrating things I would imagine as a candidate, when you have to answer for other folks. Like somebody's going to ask you, well, what did you think about what Governor Huckabee said? Or what did you think of those two senators who said you can't get pregnant from rape, or that the ridiculousness that we saw in the last cycle? I would imagine that's got to be one of the things that drive you crazy. Like, I don't have anything to do with this guy. I don't even know this guy. Now I got to answer for him.
Well, I concentrate, if I'm running, I'm concentrating on the concerns of the people whom I seek to serve. And they overwhelmingly fall in a very widespread universal category. Please concentrate on cooperating with folks on the other side of the aisle so that we can get some real progress on making sure that people who need a job have a job.
But there are some voters in your district, in every district, Republican voters who want the culture issues pursued. They want abortion issues. They want same-sex marriage, cultural issues. You do have to play to those voters to some degree, otherwise you're leaving potential Republican votes on the table. And as a candidate who wants to win office, you can't do that, right?
I have to listen. We all do. I have to be respectful. The federal government has to respect that states are going to determine these issues as states. That's what the Constitution tells us. And we have to move ahead with a tone that is respectful.
Well, to that end, I'm curious your reaction. Go Proud.
Yes.
It's the Republican group here that spoke. It's like the Log Cabin Republicans, but they were the largest group here. Well, the leader of that organization, he has left the party because he said, and I'm quoting here, that his party that he grew up with and worked for and everything else is intolerant to gays. Does he have a legitimate point?
Everybody has to, whatever party they're a member of, and this is not strictly a Democratic or Republican issue. Ultimately, this is an issue of making sure that people feel respected, that they know their views are respected, that there's an honest debate and an honest hearing, and that starts with leadership from the top. There's no question.
But do you understand where he's coming from, where he says it's intolerant? Where maybe voices like yours don't certainly fit that description, and others, and leadership, to be fair. But rank and file, it seems, are allowed to say comments that are just ugly. and there doesn't seem to be ramifications, or at least publicly being rebuked from leadership. That's the part that's surprised me. Not that you're going to have different opinions, but those opinions sometimes have been tolerated and allowed to define other people like you who don't share those opinions. You understand my point? That's always surprised me.
I do, Richard, and I think, it's up to those of us who can pursue a tone that is respectful, that is tolerant, that isn't divisive. That example, I think, is resonating.
But it can't be an intolerant policy. I mean, if a gay couple may look at a state that does not allow them to get married and say that policy itself is intolerant, regardless of whether the rhetoric is intolerant. How do you handle those complaints?
This is why we have advocacy.
Because in New York, that's not an issue, to be fair to...
That's why you have advocacy in every state. In New York, yes, in our state of New York, this issue has been settled.
Talking about intolerant, there was a comment that Governor Cuomo made that a lot of folks feel fit in that category, and what he said about those who don't agree with him on some of these same culture issues. We're going to talk about what the governor had to say after this. Please stay with us.